As you heard, my name is Judy. I'm neither a clinician nor a scientist, but I have been blessed to wear many other hats. One of my most profound hats has been the steward of my darling husband's care, and I hope to share a glimpse into our story with you over the next few minutes so you may see how involvement in research helped us create a new kind of legacy for our family. I'd like to begin with sharing some of the words written by my husband a few months prior to his Alzheimer's diagnosis back in June of 2011. I quote, "It is time to start a journal, and it is time to start a photo album of family and friends with a brief narrative of each. Sitting at my desk, I hear the sounds of a thunderstorm racing past me. I do not look forward to losing you all as I get caught up in this act of nature. In mid-morning, it is dark outside. And work. I think I will not be at this desk for much longer. I'm trying to build a positive vision of the future. As a construction project manager and a carpenter, I have always been able to put the pieces together to build beautiful places for my family, friends, and coworkers. I suspect my tools will lay unused and layered with ever-deepening layers of dust. But on a positive note, I know my loved ones will pull me out from inaction, dust me off again, and take me out for fresh air, nature's beauty, and the hugs we will all need in the future." That was my husband, always trying to build a positive vision of the future. Ours is a story of love. First and foremost, always love. Steve and I like to say that we hit the lottery of love when we met each other, and our love rewarded us with blessings that we embrace with joy and gratitude. 2 children, a comfortable home, careers that we enjoyed, and a life rich with activities. We savored the years of watching our daughter Carly and son Luke grow into adults, and delighted as they both found wonderful partners to marry, and eventually, best of all, grandchildren entered our family story. They were the promise that our love, DNA, and family story would continue. To me, Steve's goodness was the source of our bounty. He always had a smile on his face. Steve had a way of making anything seem possible. He was the craftsman of family, of love, and of hope. He built the world's best sand castles with our kids, created the best blanket forts, sets for high school plays, and even built a do-it-yourself in-ground pool in our yard. He was known for his kind and giving nature. He was the person people turned to for a listening ear or help with a construction project. He was a voracious reader and a closet writer. His body of writing consisted mostly of trying to define love with words and writing compelling pleas for everyone to love more. He enjoyed nature, hiking, sailing, and attending our children's musical and theatrical events. These were activities that he so looked forward to sharing with our grandchildren as they grew older. I knew he would pass on his astute values by teaching them, just as he taught their parents, that love, honesty, and kindness would be their most valuable and reliable tools to navigate on this journey of life. Through his actions and words, Steve showed us continually that giving was a gift in and of itself, much more gratifying than receiving. Steve was an engineer of family fun, a craftsman of love, and a visionary of positivity and hope. So that is a little overview of us, our family, and mainly Steve, and how our life went for the first 30 years of our marriage. We were generally on an even keel, and then things began to change in 2011. As we watched Steve's beautiful mother, Claire, struggle through her fourth year of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, Steve began grappling with his own cognitive challenges. He would often call to tell me that the bank password didn't work, or that he'd lost his keys once again. I'd run to his office only to find the keys in his pockets again. At our son's wedding in April of that year, a few close friends commented that they thought Steve was kind of quiet and withdrawn. These were just a few signs that something was going on. But the pivotal moment came on May 5th, 2011, when Steve received a poor performance review in his job as a construction project manager for the Special Projects Division at Northeastern University. He was devastated and embarrassed. It was so unlike the highly competent person who handled huge projects and budgets. His supervisor had let him know upon submitting a detailed financial report that Steve had already handed in that same report in days prior. It was time to find out what was really going on. So we met with Steve's PCP and had sleep testing, brain imaging, a lumbar puncture, and a neuropsych evaluation. 5 months of testing led to the diagnosis of younger onset Alzheimer's just 1 month prior to Steve's 59th birthday and the beginning of the end of his working days at Northeastern University. Upon hearing the diagnosis, we both cried, mourning the longevity we had assumed would be ours. One of his first thoughts was for our grandchildren. Steve said, "I wanted to watch them grow up and play baseball." And then, in his ever optimistic and protective way, he pivoted quickly and said that given this diagnosis, we could choose to be happy or we could choose to be sad. But the fact that we had so much love was reason enough to smile every day. We were hearing things like, get your affairs in order, stay active, 3 to 6 good years, no cure. No cure. One of the first deaths to occur with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's is the death of future dreams. How would we handle that? We both loved the Cheryl Strayed quote, "You don't have a right to the card you believe you should have been dealt. You have an obligation to play the hell out of the ones you're holding." Steve and I determined that we would make the most out of the cards we were holding. We decided we wouldn't measure our remaining years in quantity, but in how we decided to fill them. So we dug in, held each other's hands tighter, and began walking this new road with his diagnosis strapped on like a backpack. We found educational and socialization programs at the Alzheimer's Association. We advocated on both state and federal levels for additional funding for research, early diagnosis, reduction of stigma, and education for caregivers and society as a whole. Given Steve's fatherly and giving nature, it came as no surprise that he wanted to invest his greatest asset in Alzheimer's research, himself. He could do this by joining a clinical trial to test out drugs under investigation. I was far less enthusiastic. If he ended up in the group receiving an active drug, I would worry about drug side effects. He was feeling physically well every day. Why mess with that? And even the possibility of being in a trial and receiving a placebo and missing out on any benefits of a new drug would be a hard pill to swallow. But it was Steve's call, ultimately. Unfortunately, his particular profile didn't match the entry requirements for clinical drug trials at the time when we first began exploring. We would have to wait a few years for one to open up. While we were waiting, Steve's neurologist at Mass General invited us to join the memory study. This was an observational study, a longitudinal cohort that did not test drugs but gathered data by following people over a long period of time. This non-drug study was a soft entry into the world of clinical research and became our new research home. The memory study required that Steve undergo a battery of neuropsychological tests annually and involvement in brain imaging, in-depth interviews with both of us, and analysis of both blood and cerebrospinal fluid. The ultimate hope in the study is that people would eventually add to this data by donating their brains to research. Steve was involved in this study for 6 years. When asked at his first visit to consider a future brain donation, Steve said, "That's a no-brainer. Take it." He and the doctor had a good laugh, and I could already see the cathartic and empowering benefit of being in this study. And the positive feelings continued. Steve truly enjoyed his visits, even the intensive brain imaging studies. He knew he would not be around to teach his grandchildren to sail, but he would leave an important legacy for them. By giving of himself, Steve would contribute to research where his information would extend far beyond his time on Earth. We made the most of our visits, which became opportunities to meet with brilliant minds, compassionate clinicians, energetic young research assistants, and to feel like we were part of a valuable team working towards a cure. As his study partner and informant, my role felt valuable also. This was something that we could still do together. We would make a day of it, celebrating with lunch or dinner in town, a walk along the water in Boston. And at times, we would even bring our grandsons along in order for them to get a taste of what their gramps was doing to create lasting memories. One time, when Steve was having an EEG, our 4-year-old grandson was with us and watched as the electrodes were attached to Steve's head. When they closed the door and were about to begin testing, Nathan asked, "When are they going to cut Gramps' head open?" I responded that they would not be doing that. And he said, "Oh, that's good. He wouldn't be able to color with me later if they had cut his head open." These appointments also gave us another opportunity to discuss what was going on with Steve. Beyond his biannual visits with his neurologist, in the early stages, Alzheimer's symptoms can feel subjective, and it gave me great comfort to have a sounding board to confirm that I wasn't imagining the changes I saw in Steve. We felt closely watched in a very good way. Steve and I arrived at each visit with the hope of hearing that the perfect clinical trial for Steve had just opened up. It took about nearly 4 years, but finally a drug trial opened up. I was on board now, as it was beginning to be very clear to us that all of Steve's yesterdays were better than his tomorrows. He would not be getting better. The Noble trial was an 18-month double-blind study. In other words, neither the participants nor doctors knew who was receiving which treatment. In the end, we did find out that Steve had been taking the higher drug dose all along. We looked at the study as our job, and it wasn't always easy. The parking garage at Boston Medical Center was small, and we would have to drive in circles to find a spot, which often would result in Steve throwing up from motion sickness. But still, he persevered. After passing the screening and attending our first study visit for the Noble trial, we picked our grandsons up from school. Steve expressed to them how happy he was to have been chosen for the trial. 5-year-old Nathan asked why Gramps would want to be in the trial and what it meant. Steve explained that people were working hard to make sure that others in the future wouldn't get Alzheimer's. Nathan then asked, Gramps, will it make you get better? Steve answered him honestly. He said, No, it won't likely make me get better, but we don't always do things for ourselves. Sometimes we do them for the good of others. The lesson we had never dreamt of teaching turned out to be a far more valuable one than the ones we had hoped to share. This was part of our new legacy. Steve's trial ended in November of 2016. The drug had not provided enough positive outcomes to justify continuing. We entered the study knowing this was a real possibility and with the belief that every no would eventually lead to a yes towards a cure and prevention. Alzheimer's continued to deliver on its promised symptoms and steady decline, as it always does. And my dearest darling Steve broke free of the chains of this disease on April 2nd, 2018. Steve's wishes were fulfilled and his brain was donated to the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Mass General Hospital. About a month after Steve died, his neurologist, Dr. Teresa Gomez Isla, reached out to me to ask if we could meet. We had loved her so much and felt that Steve had had the best of care with her, so I was more than happy to have this meeting. During our meeting, we reminisced about Steve, and I was able to thank her for the remarkable care and guidance on our journey. She then asked if I would be interested in coming to work for the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Mass General Hospital, the very center that had offered us this path to a new legacy by being involved in research. I reminded her that I did not have a clinical background, and she replied, You have what we need. She considered our lived experience to be one that would help round out the team. Of course, filled with gratitude, I accepted. Even in his illness and death, Steve was providing for me with this new path of sustainability. In February of 2019, I began at the center as a research ambassador, meeting with people after their memory clinic visits to discuss research involvement and also offering a caregiver's perspective to our dementia care collaborative. Since that time, I have become the program coordinator of the memory study. Sometimes it feels surreal to think that Steve and I once walked through that door not knowing what to expect. And now I get to greet people and hold their hands as they enter into the realm of research. It is with remarkable, heartfelt pride that I proclaim that Steve left his brain to Mass General Hospital and his heart to me. I'm blessed to keep them together in the work I get to do each day. Thank you for listening.